Recorded on location at Aspen Ideas-Health in Aspen, Colorado.
Is there a radical new way to stop cancer and Alzheimer's? And can a new innovative government agency succeed where others have failed?
We bring in these technical experts that very clearly see these gaps, and then they just are, just passionate about addressing those. And so in the case of cancer, it wouldn't be saying, I want to launch a program to cure cancer. I want to launch a program to address digital histopathology, which is, three-dimensional analysis of tumors.
We're talking today with two highly accomplished people who are playing critical roles in this new effort. They're scientists. They have extensive credits to their names. Renee Wegrzyn is the director of the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, ARPA-H, as it's commonly called. Amy Jenkins is the director of Health Science Futures. There are guests here today at Aspen Ideas-Health. We are delighted to come to you live as opposed to our often virtual shows.
We want ideas from across the country, and there's great ideas across this country at a variety of institutions. And we want those ideas brought to us. This is a solution for all people. We're not going to get to that solution if we don't have all people kind of bringing us the ideas.
And this is Conversations on Healthcare.
Well, welcome to both of you to Conversations on Healthcare.
Thank you.
And let me start with you, Renee. Tell us more about the Advanced Research Project Agency for Health.
You got it.
I got it right. Oh my God, I was just sort of, there was that moment. But it's about 1 year old, give or take. And it really has incredible aims in terms of what it wants to achieve. But I think for many of our listeners, it's a new name, new concept, but a bold idea.
Yeah, this is really the vision of President Biden. So a little over a year ago, he announced and called on Congress to fund ARPA-H to be a place that we can take these really big bets on health, big audacious ideas to work towards cures in cancer and Alzheimer's, but actually be agnostic and be an agency that could launch a multitude of moonshots for health moving forward. And so a really special part about ARPA-H is there's not a single one of our dollars is aligned to a single disease or technology, but instead we want to really address these big problems in health. And we do that in a really special way through our program managers that come in for short-term appointments to really take that shot on goal to solve that problem and then rinse and repeat. We bring a lot through to address those problems going forward.
So that's a radical approach, right? That's new to maybe NIH. I'm not sure. Maybe it will be as part of an independent agency within NIH, but that's who came up with that concept of how to manage new projects?
So it's not a brand new concept. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has really developed the business model of being able to pursue, in their case, breakthrough technologies for national security in a problem-based approach, but really taking that business model where you give a lot of autonomy to those program managers to pursue those goals. But it's really the Congress that gave us our authorities to do special things like have direct hiring authority. So we can hire the experts who want to solve these problems very quickly that we can bring in-house, and a lot of autonomy in decision-making. So while we have been stood up within NIH and we have a wonderful relationship, especially with the technical world-class experts that work there, we bring in their insights to ARPA-H, but we're the ultimate decision makers. We set the timelines. We set those really aggressive milestones because that's our unique role in the ecosystem, to take these big risks that NIH, that the private sector can't take, and then we de-risk it, and then it leaves the agency. So that's really this new piece for us.
Margaret, I just was recollecting as you said that you can hire your own agency. We're here at the Aspen Institute, and last night we had this unique opportunity to have 3 secretaries of HHS, and one of their advice was make sure you get to hire your own people, which I thought was
I think
important.
they meant hire and fire your own people is kind of the subtitle there. But you're at this incredibly exciting time, aspirational. The vision is laid out for you and such opportunity. Money, of course, matters in these things, and we followed the progress. I know the president, originally you had hoped a $6.5 billion budget, and in the end, $2.5 billion. Still a lot of money, but tell us, as you think about what happens over these next couple of years, is it enough to launch the kind of work we know it's going to go on for a long time, but it's $2.5 billion for you to really lay out this and carry out this ambitious agenda you've designed for yourselves, Amy, or?
I think that the $2.5 billion is going to give us a great start. We've got program managers here now. We have 5 program managers that are hired. They're on our website. We have more coming every month. Those program managers, as Renee mentioned, are going to bring in their great ideas, their innovative ideas, and they're going to ask for budgets associated with those. And of course, we're good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We scrutinize those budgets. But this $2.5 billion certainly is going to get us a good start on this. And we have program managers that already have some programs. And in this round, one of our first programs was announced just over a month ago now, the Nitro program out of the Health Science Futures Office. We're very proud of it, and an audacious goal to eliminate osteoarthritis or reverse the effects of osteoarthritis. This is just an example of some of the things that we'll be able to do.
For those of us getting older.
You don't know anybody that isn't going to need a knee replacement or a hip replacement in the future. We haven't mentioned, haven't met anybody out there that says, oh, we don't need osteoarthritis reversal. So this is a good example of the types of things that we'll be able to do with this funding and with these program managers as they come on board.
And these program managers, if I can just ask, I went a little bit exploring on this, content experts, specialists in the problem, or experts in the management of a research project to get to a certain end? Yeah. Or both?
Both, yeah. Program managers tend to be a very unique type of person, a very unique personality. We ask for both the personality and the idea. So they need to be technical experts in their realm. They need to understand this field. They oftentimes are practicing physicians or practicing professors or have been in industry for many years. They understand the gaps in the healthcare system. And they also have a real passion and a drive to push and motivate people. That's one of the most important things that a program manager does. And I think maybe it's some of those little less than tangible, less than scientific. Can you motivate a community to go out and do something that's audacious that they've never considered doing before? Do you have that personality? The example that I'll use in our Nitro program, our first program manager that launched that program, Dr. Ross Urich, he's a surgeon, and he's dealt with many people, and he's replaced joints. And he said, I could do this for the rest of my career, or I could try to fix the problem from the source.
Renee, you started off talking about the audacious nature, and I was thinking about how President Biden originally said that which was completely doable, to cut cancer rates by 50% over the next 25 years. That is a lofty, unaudacious goal. Do you think you have the resources to do that? And I know you're probably trying to level set what are the expectations for the general public. Maybe talk about what you think might be realistic to look at, and yet the president has been such a great champion and spokesperson around the issue around cancer that he's dealt with on a personal level. And obviously this is something Americans and everyone around the world is very concerned about as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very personal for the president, obviously, personal for myself as well. I lost my mother to cancer. And so we know that there's a lot left to do. And there isn't going to be, I think, one cure for cancer. There's so many different types of cancers. And the way you should think about ARPA-H in this context is, again, as Amy said, we bring in these technical experts that very clearly see these gaps. And then they just are, just passionate about addressing those. And so in the case of cancer, it wouldn't be saying, I want to launch a program to cure cancer. I want to launch a program to address digital histopathology, which is, three-dimensional analysis of tumors using AI to help accelerate diagnostics and then make that accessible from, bridging from the innovation that happens in a research lab all the way to the clinic, where that gap it's not closed today. And so in a 3-year investment, let's say, it's up to the program manager to set these timelines, but how can I set this goal to get to that, seamless diagnosis and delivery of that data into the clinic, and then everything that needs to happen in that 3 years. And so across the Moonshot objectives, we're looking for opportunities for ARPA-H to, that we know with our investment, it's so high risk that if we're successful, it's going to just change the state of the art. And so, whether that is looking at screening or surgical interventions is an area that we think there's some opportunities there, for example. That's where we're really going to make those big shots on goal.
And when you're hiring somebody for a 3-year, is there a KPI that are there deliverables that they have? And I was thinking, like investment firms, They didn't get there in a year and a half. They're sort of gone. What's the strategy?
So it's just like an investment firm. It's a portfolio approach. So first, my approach and Amy's approach to developing, our offices and our program managers, we have a portfolio of problems that we want to solve. So this year we have a goal that we've set for ourselves to hire 20 program managers. Those should be in 20 totally different areas, technical experts. So maybe we have a surgical expert, maybe we have an osteoarthritis surgeon on staff. All of those folks are relevant and also help, I think, create create the imagination for the public to say, okay, I get it now what ARPA-H is going to be about. Now then inside those programs, so Ross, for example, who's launching this Nitro program, he has announced how he wants to get to a solution in 5 years in the clinic. And he's asked the performer community, is what we call the people that we fund, to say, bring me your idea of how you're going to get there. So he won't prescribe a solution. And then he's going to select several teams, and then it's up to him. He's going to set those metrics and milestones and measure them. And as the manager of that program, he will divert resources if he needs to. He'll double down in places where he needs to. And so that's that really active program manager and being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. But at the end of the day, maybe not all the teams make it to that final solution, but he's always driving towards that. Wonderful. And I'll actually invite Amy to share, failure's okay too, and what that could mean for ARPA-H.
Yeah, I mean, I think related to what you were saying, Renee, one point I do want to make is that we look for audacious goals. We're trying to really change and be very revolutionary. And so on the idea of curing cancer, we want to look at very defined problems, because when you define the problem, then you can define the end goal. So that's what you may take a chunk of the goal towards curing cancer and work on that one defined problem related to maybe surgical outcomes, as Renee mentioned. And so we also, in the process of defining those goals and thinking about what the future holds and how we could be revolutionary, we want to take risk. You don't change the world if you're not risky, but we also want to have some successes. I will point to a former program manager that I worked with at DARPA. He said that if you don't invent the internet at DARPA, you get a B. You don't get, and I give him full credit for that quote, but it's true. We still want successes, even though we're being very, very risky. And so we look for things called successful failures. If we are looking for the 100% goal and we only reach the 75, the program writ large, the metrics may not have been met, but the 75% goal actually might be quite revolutionary and still change the world.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I know you referenced DARPA, and we know you both served there, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Like Mark, I'm trying to make sure I get that whole name in there. And we now know, and I think it's widely known, that DARPA was about creating the internet and GPS, which I'm very grateful for, being directionally challenged. But I don't recall ever hearing about that while it was in play. And I'm wondering, as you design ARPA and have the freedom to be a little more creative, are you going to be more like Francis Collins and the All of Us project, where from the very beginning of that 10-year project, they have made sure to be widely communicating with the American people and with the people it was most likely to impact? And wondering, what's that balance? Do you have an active strategy, or one of you in charge of that strategy, for really letting the American people know what are the projects that you're working on and why should they care about this, which of course might translate into why should they be supportive of additional funding? Tell us about your thinking and strategy on that.
Yeah, maybe I'll kick us off and then hand it off. So what's really unusual about ARPA-H, maybe when you compare to DARPA, our customer base is so much larger, right? It's all Americans and probably the whole world, in fact. But even if we just focus on all Americans, that's a huge audience, right? And from pediatrics to geriatrics and rural and urban. And so we really thought a lot about how do we reach those patients? Because we're here to build this bridge between innovation and getting this to the American people. Our mission is to accelerate better health outcomes for everyone. And so really take that to heart, that everyone piece. And so there's two things I kind of want to mention. One is we got a little bit creative and we did something called the ARPA-H Dash. So we have a prize authority, and we put just a small $15,000 prize just to solicit ideas from the general public. So it could be my kids, submitting an idea, but also, serious researchers out there. What are the types of ideas that ARPA-H should be working on? And so we did this as a bracket style challenge, launched in the March timeframe. And And so every week we did a little bit of a down select to get folks voting on these ideas, but we were training the public to think in the ARPA model. So we have this set of 10 questions called the Heilmeyer questions that frame every problem. So it's, what are you trying to do? What's the problem you're solving? How is it done today? What's new in your approach? And those 3 questions, we made everybody who submitted an idea answer those questions, so they understood that we're different from, so to directly answer, are we going to be like the Francis Collins model? No, because this is how we address it. And then they asked them to provide a piece of evidence of why they thought now is the time to make this investment, because there's a patent or there's a paper that shows this is possible, or there's a new company that's working on that. So that was one fun way, I think, to really engage the public and get them thinking the way that we are, and we're thinking about future ways to continue that engagement. The second is Congress, in their infinite wisdom, has given us 3 geographic sites for ARPA-H, but only 210 employees. So there isn't any one office or 3 offices that really represent all American geographies that we want to serve. So we kind of struggled with this a little bit. How are we going to really reach all Americans? We have such a small footprint. So we've decided to actually use this as an opportunity to launch a hub and spoke network where we can have 3 hubs, but each hub really is tasked with recruiting like 50 state level spokes, where we can, if there's a new osteoarthritis program, which there is, that is launching a clinical trial that needs to address a diverse population, which is a requirement of the program, that it can't just be a clinical trial, it has to be one that's representative of the diversity of patients. We can lean into this network to actually get those people enrolled in clinical trials and accelerate those health outcomes. So by design, we're trying to build this in. And the way we've been describing this is, yes, the internet came from DARPA. It was called the ARPANET, the original 4 nodes. So this is the ARPANET for health. And so this is a connection of people, of institutions to really come together and serve ARPA-H. And so that's our latest experiment.
That's
but I know there's other ways we're reaching out, so I'd love to hear.
And we absolutely want people to know what we're doing. So unlike DARPA, we don't maybe have that mystique, and we don't want that.
You don't have defense in front of
Right,
your
we don't
name.
have defense in front of it. Although DARPA was very open as well. We want to be very open. Frankly, we want patients, we want advocates, we want doctors, we want healthcare providers to be talking to us so that we know what the problems are. We don't want to do this in a bubble in a building in Arlington. We want to ensure that we know what the problems are, and we will go out into these communities. We have what we call PM excursions, and so the PMs will go out and immersion experiences. They'll spend time in these communities so that they understand what the problems are, and so that they can think about what their next program might be. If it's osteoarthritis today, maybe it's something completely different tomorrow. And so we want those interactions. The other thing I will say is that while a lot of folks say, you mentioned how DARPA invented the internet and did all these things in GPS and we didn't know about it. I don't know that DARPA knew about it when they were doing it.
That's right.
They didn't know what this was going to become. And so a lot of the things that we're funding and that the advances we're making, we may not see the fruition of that for 20 or 30 years, but we're laying the seeds, particularly in the Health Science Futures Office. That's really our goal in this ecosystem, is to lay those scientific and technological seeds so that we have these great advances in the future. And so you might not even know that the imaging device that's going to be used on your grandchildren and my grandchildren was a seed that we laid in the Health Science Futures Office in the next 5 years.
Well, that's great. Margaret, I so much like the idea of the prize. I'm a Trekkie, and there used to be a tricorder prize.
Yeah.
So, you may have to sort of think about, am I going to do a Sheldon Award or something for young people to be thinking about that? But I want to just pull the thread on the issue around communication, because it's not only the American public, but you have Congress.
Right.
And you have a change in Congress that has happened. You've got some people who voted for this legislation and yet had reservations about its location in NIH. What's the general communication strategy around Congress? Because this is such an important program.
Right.
We don't want it to be, we want it to be bipartisan.
Right.
And I'm sure you want it to be bipartisan as well, and why that hub and spoke model makes sense. What's happening on the Hill around this? What do you need to do? You're both knee deep in the let's produce something, but you also have responsibilities to make sure that Congress and the government is supportive.
Yeah, so we didn't have our authorities when I walked in the door, and so it was a little bit of a risk taking the job because, as you heard in the panel last night, there's certain things you want must-haves for being successful. And so the first 3 months that I was at ARPA-H, I spent a lot of time on the Hill, meeting directly with members and their teams, and just letting them know, when I'm not here and you're in a room and you're talking about ARPA-H, these are the things that you cannot compromise on, and here's why.
Sure.
And I always had listening ears for every member that I met, regardless of where they were from and what party. And at the end of the day, everybody wants ARPA-H to be successful. Yeah. They may have a slightly different vision and passion for what they hope that we invest in. But health is universal, right? We all struggle with it. We all want there to be better solutions, faster solutions. And so it's really leaning into that common thread that we all have and figuring out how can we bring everybody to the table. And I do ask every member, what does success look like for ARPA-H? And what a learning opportunity for me. Right. So, speaking with some folks in rural areas, really just like addressing substance abuse and how do you address that? Others very passionate about cures for cancer, which makes absolute sense. Others making sure that marginalized communities are brought along and that we don't, generate another $1 million gene therapy coming down the pipeline. And so, we take all of those nuggets and make sure as we make investments in those areas to let them know, hey, we're investing in these areas that you care about. Here's how, our growing portfolio. And so it's been a great conversation moving forward. Everybody does want ARPA-H in their district or their state. And so what we really are emphasizing is like ARPA-H is everywhere. If we're doing our jobs right, ARPA-H is everywhere. As we launch new programs, Ross just had a Proposers Day in Minnesota. And so we Minneapolis. So really trying to get out there and engage communities and have a presence is so important.
Can I just pick up on the issue of marginalized population? Margaret mentioned Francis Collins' work on All of Us, and it's a program that's near and dear to our heart. We're part of the IRB development for that. And you've got so much data out there, but it doesn't relate to all of us, right? Yeah. And you're looking at this, if you're a program manager, you're looking at information that might be about a white population and not really a diverse population. Again, just your thoughts on how you might be addressing that, and the lens that people look through in that is so clouded by scientific data that is leaning in one direction, not leaning forward.
Yeah, so a few concrete things. I'll come back to this ARPANET for Health that we're establishing across the country. What I didn't mention is that there's a data layer, there's a data commons on top of this to address exactly the problem that you're talking about. So whether we have an osteoarthritis program or a surgery program, we want to make sure that we are collecting all of the data that represents truly all of us. Right. Because we want to usher in these new AI technologies. They're going to be incredible to healthcare, but we need to make sure that the data set is reflective of the American population. And so we have fantastic experts, data experts that one of them, Dr. Jen Roberts, leads our Resilient Systems office, who is helping really think about how do we make these data fabrics. It's hard work. How do we do it in an automated way too, that non-experts can also kind of benefit from that sharing of the data. We have a really unique authority that we can reimburse FDA directly. And so we're in discussions with the Commissioner's Office and other folks in the different centers at FDA of how can we incentivize pre-competitive data sharing, right? So we heard yesterday about repurposing drugs to cure diseases.
Very exciting.
Any drug that gets approved, like how many mountains of data are sitting at the drug company that nobody gets to see? How do we incentivize like sharing of that data? Maybe we can cure these other diseases. It cures right under our noses with something that's already FDA approved, right? So we want to be creative about incentivizing that, not just creating some of those technologies, but incentivizing it. I don't know if you want to add anything.
You heard it last night, and for anybody that was at the quick ideas last night, I think we also are entering a phase where whole genome sequencing the cost of that has been brought down to a point where the genetic therapies and things that are going to specifically target genes, we can actually have the specificity to target genetic populations and to ensure that the therapies that we're developing actually will work in all of the populations. They may need to be slightly tweaked just based on different genetic backgrounds, but that will be certainly an important push for us at ARPA-H.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm getting very excited hearing about all this. We also, among the many things we do, we have a research institute, the Weitzman Institute, which is set up to focus on research with special populations and the underserved populations. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking about all the tools at our disposal that we didn't have even a few years ago. The statewide health information exchanges, which Connecticut has achieved as well, the all claims databases, the database that was developed off of the COVID vaccine whole project and nationally made available. And there are more and more atypical groups engaged in research, right? I imagine the Harvards and the Yales will all be right there with their ideas, but increasingly there's the people engaged in community participatory research, the community health center network across the country is engaged. It seems you've really got your work cut out for you reaching out to all of these groups. And I'm wondering, is it 2 + 20 people fanning out across the country? Tell us more about how people can connect in with this mission, people who are engaged in research today, but it may not be the bench science that they have typically associated with NIH. And to NIH's credit, they've also been really expanding their view.
I'm happy to jump in first. So I have been going out to meetings across the country and really wanting people to focus and wanting people to understand that. I actually had a question in an audience one time that said, "Are you interested in proposals from academic institutions that aren't on the coasts?" And I was floored. I was floored as I stood in North Carolina, in Western North Carolina. I was floored that, of course, and actually, I think we take it very, very seriously. We do want, the coasts are great. I grew up on the coast, educated on the coast, but we want ideas from across the country. And there's great ideas across this country at a variety of institutions. And we want those ideas brought to us. This is a solution for all people. We're not going to get to that solution if we don't have all people kind of bringing us the ideas. So we have an open, broad agency announcement where people can submit their ideas, just 3 pages. So these are for the researchers of the community that want to bring us their ideas. Please bring us those ideas.
What's that website they go to?
It's at ARPA-H.gov, ARPA-H.gov. And you can say, work with us, or I think it's engage. And right under there, it's a very clear link to our open, broad agency announcement. Please bring us the ideas from across the country. We're taking that very seriously. We want program managers from across the country that represent diverse backgrounds. We are actively going out and seeking out these populations and meetings and engagements across the country so that we can bring in program managers that represent the entire population and bring their ideas to us. So if you're a program manager and you say, wow, this sounds great, but this isn't typically the kind of job I would consider, please, again, on ARPA-H.gov, there's the apply now. You can see some videos about what it means to be a program manager and put in a very quick application. We'd love to talk to people because we want to bring that diversity of opinions.
Well, you seem like you're open to all ideas across the country, and that's so great. And Renee, maybe talk a little bit about the 4 focus areas. Were those Congress developed or internally developed or sort of jointly? And
yeah, so they were. This is one of the privileges of being a director is taking in insights and perspectives from a lot of places. So it was a lot of listening. I do want to emphasize what Amy just said. Kind of people that are going to be great leaders at ARPA-H and great program managers have to be good listeners. You can't just assume the ideas. So it was a little bit, the White House, even before I got there, had listening sessions, listening to the members of Congress. But also, having just come from the private sector, I also understood what are areas that are kind of ripe. If we were able to have further investment at ARPA-H, I know there's going to be somebody to pick it up on the other end, right? That is, there's not, like DARPA has the Department of Defense is going to be the advanced developer of like missiles and weapons systems. There isn't that thing for med tech and health tech, right? So we have to make sure that we are putting them out into the world in a way that they can be picked up and sustained by somebody else. And so the 4 focus areas that we've aligned on: health science futures, which is more of the fundamental research of what are the fundamental proofs of concept that don't exist yet. Maybe they're just on the back of the napkin today that we can show that are possible. Scalable solutions. This is really reaching all Americans where they're at, no matter what. So think about during the pandemic, we literally used the U.S. Postal Service to deliver antigen tests. Like, not a lot of tech innovation in there, but it's like the brilliance of bringing a new capability to get to more people. How do we scale that? How do we even scale manufacturing in a cost-effective manner? That's what we're thinking of scalable solutions. For proactive health, this is really recognizing we want to extend the healthy lifespan of any one American as long as possible and to prevent them from becoming patients in the first place. So whether it's detection and diagnostics or behavioral science, those are the investments we want to make from that office. And then the office that Dr. Jen Roberts runs, Resilient Systems, is really thinking, okay, how are we have a systems integration approach to this. We need new health systems. And if we want to include everybody, and so what does that look like in terms of infrastructure that we not necessarily want to build, but want to create a vision for improving, but also what's the data layer associated with that. And these are very high level concepts.
Sure.
And any one program manager may actually pitch concepts in each of those offices. So I require they launch at least a program a year. They hit the ground running when they arrive, but maybe their first program is Health Science Futures, and maybe they have a scalable solutions idea, and that's completely within scope for us.
Wonderful. Well, this is kind of a moot point because the decision is made. Should ARPA-H be outside of NIH? Should ARPA-H be inside NIH? And now, as I understand it, you are one of the institutes of NIH. That's accurate to say?
No, not accurate.
Okay, correct.
I'll do some myth busting.
So do the myth busting, and then I'll have my Part B question.
Yeah, close though.
Yeah.
So it's like we are not an institute. So there are 27 institutes at NIH. We are the first agency that was stood up within NIH. So we have incredible access to all of those institutes, to folks like the All of Us program, and incredible partners and thought leaders together with us. But I report to Secretary Becerra, and so we have a different agenda. We have a different budget, and we have autonomy that's based on our reporting structure. And it really is kind of the best of both worlds.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's great. I had read that, but I hadn't gotten clear exactly what the nature of being an institute or not was. So the follow-up question, I guess, would be, tell us a little bit about maybe, past the reception and welcome, which I'm sure you got from the institutes. What's the ongoing path of working together, of sharing ideas? There isn't one of those institutes that doesn't do work that we're interested in. Alcohol and drug abuse, the Institute of Nursing Research, infectious disease, you name it, right? It's all of interest to people who are engaged in healthcare. But what's the community of collaboration or even just sharing what people are working on that's going on there?
So one thing's our program managers, so like we've heard before, our program managers come in with an idea, and they work on that idea and they push that out as a program. In their initial stages, when they first come into the agency, one of the very first things, in the first week, oftentimes, the first week or 2 weeks, they go around to the relevant institutes and centers and they ask for points of contact, or they may know some of them, to talk about, here's are some of my ideas. I know you guys are in this space, clearly the NIH is going to be in many of the things and have efforts. What can we leverage? The foundational and the fundamental basic research that the NIH maybe is funding to then push our revolutionary idea. And so we're bringing in those experts to ensure that we're not being duplicative, but to ensure that what we're doing is both revolutionary, but synergistic. We also have had a lot of interactions where this may be something that's so risky that it's maybe likely to fail, or it could fail. And so we can push on that revolutionary aspect. But if we're successful in 5 years, this could then transition into an NIH program. And it could be funded by an NIH clinical program, or it could be run by a clinical trial within the NIH. So we have a lot of both opportunities for kind of business relationships, but then also a lot of opportunities for our program managers to work with the experts within all the centers within NIH.
So we'll add that to their job description. Expert networker, not afraid of competition.
We joke that they talk to about 50 to 100 people in their first about a month to 2 months within the organization to ensure that they really do understand the landscape. Occasionally you're going to miss somebody, but you talk to people and then you ask that person to give you 5 more people to talk to. It's really important that we understand the landscape.
Well, that's so good. It sounds like you have the best of both worlds. But Amy, I want to follow up on the program managers. Can people still apply? And
Please,
how do they apply? And
yes.
Well, I'm sure you're out there across the country looking at bright lights everywhere, but maybe tell our audience here what's the best pathway in. And
absolutely. So there's a couple. We are still recruiting. What I say is that, as Renee mentioned, we're trying to hire 20 program managers by the end of this year. At steady state, we'll have anywhere between 60 and maybe 100 program managers. So we have a lot more to go. So we're hiring today. But the very interesting part about ARPA-H is that the program managers have a 3-year term, and then they could possibly be renewed up to another 3 years, maximum of 6 years, and then they have to leave. By the time we fill out our whole entire agency, the first group are already going to be leaving, and we're
Yeah.
going to be hiring again. So we will be hiring in perpetuity, and so we're looking for those people. There's a couple different ways to get engaged with ARPA-H on our website. If you go to how to apply or how to become a program manager, it's actually right across the top of our website. There's a couple different videos there of myself and Renee and myself and Dr. Roberts talking about what it means to be a program manager so that people have an understanding of this. There's a very clear application process. We're looking for a cover letter, a CV, the standard things. And then we ask that people tell us what's your idea. And they tell us their idea and using those Heilmeyer questions that Renee mentioned. And so they fill out those questions, they submit it. The other thing I will note is that people get very nervous. They're like, this is a very different type of job. We very typically are not going to look at your application. Nobody so far has come to ARPA-H and been hired on day one. It is very much a learning experience. We want people to know that you don't have to have the perfect application. We have a whole team of people that are helping people understand what it means to be an ARPA program manager. So we just want the idea.
Thank you both for being here. And I can't think of a better place for you to engage in conversations with people. It's probably the Aspen Institute Ideas-Health gathering is really something similar to what you want to build in your own organization, this cultivation of ideas. And we are very excited that you're in leadership positions and look forward to continuing to follow your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Really
And thank you
appreciate
to
it.
our audience
Thank
for
you.
joining
Thank
us today from this incredibly beautiful spot. It is not a green screen behind us. We're here at Aspen Ideas-Health. Amy, Renee, thank you so much for joining us today
Thank
and
you.
for sharing
Thank
your
you.
audacious goals with us.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
That's
very
great.
much.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Best of luck.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
This copyrighted program is produced by Conversations on Healthcare and cannot be reproduced or retransmitted in whole or in part without the express written consent from Community Health Center, Inc. The views expressed by guests are their own, and they do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Conversations on Healthcare or its affiliated entities.